Hi, I'm Mark Pack, editor of Liberal Democrat Newswire and co-author with the brilliant Candy Piercy of the Liberal Democrat General Election Agents Manual. Welcome to this, the latest and probably the last in my election briefing video, trying to explain, particularly for new members, a little bit about what the Liberal Democrats get up to at election time. It's only a few days as I record this until polling day in the 2017 general election, which perhaps I should say until the first 2017 general election, who knows, hung parliament, snap election later in the year. We may be able to get to do all of this all over again before Christmas. Isn't that a nice thought to look forward to? But back to the next few days. Coming up on Thursday itself, polling day, it's a day that is often quite quiet in the media. Most of the media deliberately soft pedal their news coverage and tend to restrict themselves to fairly straightforward factual reporting about shock horror, party leader has gone to vote in their constituency. However, for political campaigners, polling day is very much not a quiet formulaic day, but a day of really hard work because it's the final opportunity to persuade people to switch their votes, to firm up our support and to actually get people to go and vote in person at the polling station, or if they've got a postal ballot, they can still return their postal ballot until 10 p.m. on polling day. So, a little bit about what happens on polling day. First off, those postal voters, bad idea to post your ballot back on polling day itself, but you can return it to the council, you can drop it off at your local polling station, and in some cases, if for example somebody's housebound, if they ring the council will put arrangements in place to come and pick up the postal ballot from them. If you're a party campaigner, absolutely make sure that you don't touch anyone else's postal ballot paper. That is a real complete no-no. It's not in line with Electoral Commission's Code of Conduct. It's the sort of thing that can get you kicked out of the party and indeed quite possibly get you convicted and jailed. So absolutely don't touch anyone else's postal ballot papers. But if you have someone who hasn't returned their postal vote yet and they're still keen to do so and they want to vote for us, definitely put them in touch with the local council, and the council can help them out if they're not going to be able to return the postal ballot, say, to their local polling station on polling day itself. Now, that's postal voters. What about all the other voters? What we tend to do on polling day is to go round and call on people and to remind them that it's polling day. That's particularly important at local elections and by-elections where a lot of people actually don't notice it's polling day. That bit matters a little bit less, obviously, at general election, which is much higher profile. But as well as reminding people that it's polling day, we can also give them a reminder of our main message or our final messages to help ensure that people who support us are definitely going to go and cast their vote for us. But also, therefore, we often will call on people who are soft supporters of other parties. Maybe there's a party where we're running a tactical vote squeeze on that party, and therefore a final call from us on polling day might help persuade some of their supporters to actually finally come over and vote for us in the election. So that process of going around calling on voters on polling day is called knocking up. Always a good example of how important it is to explain jargon to new people and not assume what it means, because of course knocking up can mean various other slightly different activities. But knocking up is going round, calling on people, dropping off pieces of paper, giving them the piece of paper whether they're in or leaving it if they're out. The other main activity is what's called as telling. And this involves supporters of all parties standing or sitting, if the returning officer is nice, standing or sitting outside a polling station, making a note of who has voted. And the reason for doing that is if you know who has voted, you know not to bother them later in the day to try and remind them to vote and to firm up their support. What classically will therefore happen is you'll have a teller from each of the main parties sat or stood together outside the polling station, and local practice and returning officer preferences vary a little bit about whether it's okay to ask the voter as they go into the polling station, or you have to wait until the voter's coming out of the polling station to ask them. And in some cases, local practice is that it's absolutely fine and normal for the voters to wave their polling card at you, and you can make therefore a note of their polling number. In other cases, you have to ask them sort of who they are and make a note of their name or address. As I said, local practice on that varies a fair amount. There is some standard guidance from the Electoral Commission, but if you're a teller, the absolutely important thing to make sure is that the agent or other person briefing tellers in the local team explains to you when you can ask, when you can't ask, what the correct way of doing is for that local context that you're in. So knocking up, telling. Of course, knocking up can also be done on the phone or even electronically through sending people emails, etc. So you'll quite often have people taking a little bit of a break from knocking up on the doorsteps to sit down for a little while and do telephone knocking up. And the whole digital side of campaigning really important. Those final emails, those final digital adverts, etc., reminding people to vote and targeted in particular at supporters who haven't yet voted. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea of what happens on polling day. I'm going to be off down in one of our target seats in southwest London helping out on polling day. I guess probably about, if I have a really good productive day, maybe 30, 40, 50 extra votes perhaps I'll manage to secure for the party if I'm doing really well and calling on some undecided people in amongst the supporters. The reason I'm going to be doing that off in one of our target seats is obviously wherever I do that, be great to score a few more votes for the party. But if it's in a seat where those few votes could be the difference between us having an extra MP as well or not, then those are votes that are really doubly valuable because it's extra votes to the party. That's great. Extra MP as well. That would be fantastic. So I hope this has helped explain what happens on polling day. I hope it's maybe also encouraged you to think about helping a bit more on polling day than you might have otherwise. And if you are able to help on polling day and you can get to a target seat or you can do some phoning for a target seat, please do so, because that is not just fantastic. It's doubly fantastic because extra MPs are so crucial and so vital for the party's rebuilding. Thanks very much as ever for listening.